for managing change. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Flickinger.
Welcome Toastmasters and honored guests. Today, as Michael indicated, we're going to talk about the ADKAR model. And a number of weeks ago, I spoke to the group and talked about leading change, and the focus was leadership and the importance of leadership. And not only just leadership, but leading within oneself. So during that discussion, we had mentioned change models, and ADKAR was one of the models. So what I'm going to do today is walk this team, walk this group around what is the ADKAR model so we can better understand it. So as we get into change management, and Michael mentioned the word change management, and the first thing we need to understand is we don't manage change. We can nurture change, we can support change, we can help it along, but we don't truly manage change. So I prefer, instead of change management, I prefer to call it change nurturation or change transformation. When you think about change, as I mentioned in my previous talk, there are as many models and processes for change as there are consultancies that would love to come to your company and help you change. So there are tons and tons of models out there, but if you break it down to its essence, the ADKAR model really pulls out what is embedded in all of the change models. I'm going to call it structured common sense. So specifically, ADKAR tells you what are the key components that one needs to use. One other key piece about change that we need to understand, and the reason that a change process is so important, is if you go back to John Kotter in 1995, his Harvard Business Review article, he told us that only 30% of the change efforts are successful. Fast forward over a decade later, McKinsey & Company does another study. And as I mentioned, the whole change consultancy world has continued to increase and more models are out there. And what they found was just that, only 30% of the change efforts are successful. So as we step through the ADKAR model, don't lose sight of the prerequisite. Without leadership, you're not going to be successful. But if you do have leadership, and you've got the right-minded leadership as we spoke to in our previous talk, now, if you have a structured process to move change through your organization, now you have a much better chance of being successful and likely greater than 30%. So let's talk about the ADKAR model. ADKAR model, as I said, is structured common sense. It's very simple. A is for awareness. D is for desire. K is for knowledge. A is for action. And then finally R for reinforcement. I prefer, instead of the term reinforcement, I prefer sustainment. But nonetheless, it's reinforcing and sustaining the gains that one has made. So let's step through each of these components, talk a little bit more about it, make sure that we can understand exactly what it means to us. So first of all, awareness. So the first thing in any change effort is we need to create awareness. So many companies, so many organizations jump in and say, we need to change X, and then they go out to take action. Oftentimes the people, the organization, has no awareness of what's happening, so what's the first thing that happens? Resistance. Tons and tons of resistance because they don't know why change is happening. Why should I have to change from where I am today to my new state? So it's critical to generate awareness with information, communication, and then ultimately create an understanding in the group of the need for change. We may not like it, but if we understand it, we're at least going to begin to open to the potential change. The second piece of ADKAR is desire. This gets back to what we talked before about compliance versus commitment. How do we generate desire in that person, that group, that organization, or that team? And here, we've got to give them a compelling reason to change. And some examples are competitive advantage, negative consequences. Maybe it's about job security, or potentially there's a government regulation that we just have to do it. But nonetheless, we need to take people and get them to have some level of want to, or some level of desire to want to change. Now those motivations can be different. One can be fear. I'm afraid of losing my job. I'm afraid of the company not performing and how it will affect me. The other side of it is maybe there's something out there that I want to go obtain that's bigger or better than where I'm at today. So understanding the motivators are important, but again, creating that desire. So once I have awareness, now I can begin to create some level of desire. The next step, now if I have desire, I'm going to be open and I'm going to be receptive to bringing in knowledge. So now I can train, I can educate, I can provide examples. That person is now receptive to listen. The resistances, the filters have gone away. So now I'm going to open up and I'm going to listen to the information you're giving me. But again, if I'm not aware of the situation, I don't have the desire, I'm likely not going to take the knowledge. So knowledge is the next step, and it's critical you go in order. Now, once we have knowledge, that's when we get action. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, that's where most companies fail, or most change efforts fail, as we go from, we need to do something to go take action, we missed everything in between. If you've done the first 3 steps, oftentimes you'll find that action spontaneously begins to happen. And if it doesn't spontaneously happen, then the leader can come in and give them a little boost, get over the activation energy, and next thing you know, the people will begin to take action, and then it will start to create pull. So going back to resistance versus pull, if you take the first 3 prerequisite steps, now all of a sudden when action begins to happen, it'll be a pull process instead of the push that we normally find in change efforts. So again, in the action side, it could be implementing new processes, standard work. You may be needing to remove barriers, but at this point, your group will now be able to actually take the action you desire. Then the last piece, and probably the most important at the end of this, is the reinforcement. And again, let's call it sustainment. This comes back to leadership. There's the positive side, there's celebration, there's recognition, individual recognition, and there's also the negative side. Some people, there may be an outlier. Some people may be not willing to jump in, and the others may say, well, if they're not going to do it, why do I have to do it? So sometimes you have to come in and have accountability, generate consequences for not joining in the change once the momentum is started. John Wooden says it best. John Wooden said that sometimes it's a pat on the back, and sometimes it's a little bit lower. But nonetheless, we need to be aware of how we sustain or reinforce that change that we've now begun to initiate, because the momentum will start to move, and with proper reinforcement, the change will take on a life of its own, and the next thing you'll find is you can't keep up with it as a leader. So in review, when we think about change, leadership is a prerequisite. So if we have leadership, then if we have a structured process, like ADKAR, awareness, desire, knowledge, action, reinforcement, we're going to greatly enhance our capability to change the organization. The other thing to take away from this group is, one, if you're going to change a person or hope to help move that person along, you can use this for a single person, you can use it for a group, organization, a company. But before you initiate change, walk through the model step by step and have a plan. And if you're initiating change and it's unsuccessful, pull this model back out and evaluate everything that you've done and figure out where the gap may be. And then go address the gap. So with the use of the ADKAR model, everyone can have much more successful change as they push it through the organization. Thank you.